I'm Lee Moore.
I'm Rob Moore.
And this is the Chinese Literature Podcast.
Again. How many technical problems are we going to have with me at the helm? Millions? Limitless?
Limitless, I think. Yeah. What are we looking at today, Rob?
We're looking at another story from Pu Songling.
Pu Songling. I love Pu Songling.
Everyone loves Pu Songling.
No one doesn't love Pu Songling.
I'm pretty sure that's true. I think if you were to go to China and just ask random people who read anything at all, so do you like Pu Songling? You get a yes every time.
Pretty much. One of our professors, Roy Chan, who is this figure with...
He's read everything.
I'm pretty sure he's read an amazing amount of intellectual heft.
Yeah.
We both respect the wazoo out of him.
Right.
Even though he is this kind of highly theoretical figure in Chinese literary studies, he kind of gets giggly almost when he talks about Pu Songling.
Because he grew up reading Pu Songling.
He grew up, yeah.
Or having it read to him. I'm not sure which. But
we were discussing which translations we read as kids of Pu Songling.
It's been translated a lot.
A ton.
One of my dissertation chapters is on the first translation of Pu Songling into French by a Chinese guy. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, because why would you choose this? Which it's interesting, actually, because he translated it because he thought it was a great example of traditional Chinese family values.
And that's kind of the story that we have today.
It is. It's weird. Okay, so for those who didn't catch the other Pu Songling podcasts we've done, we're talking 17th century.
Yeah, so Pu Songling was born in 1640, which was 4 years before the Ming Dynasty ended. The Ming Dynasty ended in 1644. Pu Songling died in 1715, so he was largely a Qing figure. And the main work, the only work he's really famous for, the only thing he really published as far as I know, or the main thing he published is Liao Jai Zhi, which is...
Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio.
Strange Tales from Make-Do Studios. It's been translated...
Lao Studio.
Yeah. You can just refer to it as Liao Jai.
Mm-hmm.
And it was published posthumously. The stories that I've heard is Liao Jai was essentially... So Pu Songling, he was incredibly smart and an incredibly good writer, very skilled at the examination system, and he smashed through the first of China's three-tiered imperial examination system. He just kind of passed with flying colors. And then after it, he kept failing for years and years and years until he just became an old man. And supposedly he set up some sort of like tea stop along a road. He's from Zibo, which is in Shandong. So we're talking about kind of halfway in between Beijing and Shanghai, modern Beijing and Shanghai.
Yep.
He set up a tea stand and asked travelers for their stories. And that's supposedly, mythically, how he collected this ginormous... I've got the 8-volume set from Taiwan, and it's a very huge collection of mostly ghost stories, but sometimes just stories of the unusual.
Yeah.
Some of the stories are just essentially a person from Scotland like comes to Guangzhou, and he has red hair, and that's the story. It's just like a paragraph report on that. So some of these are real stories. We say ghost stories, but they're not just ghost stories. They're just unusual stories.
It strikes me a little the way that the Extraordinary Voyages by Jules Verne comes across, because he's science fiction, but a good chunk of his stuff really isn't science fiction at all. It's just about people doing stuff. Around the World in 80 Days is only vaguely science at all. And it's similar with this one. This is a long collection, but the stories that are the most famous, just as with Jules Verne, are the classic genre pieces, the ghost stories, the monster stories, the Taoist priests changing things.
And there are lots of ghost stories. We've got lots of fox ladies. So not
foxy ladies.
Thank you, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
But fox ladies who are female spirits who steal the souls of men by sleeping with them. Normally, like lonely scholars who wander into some abandoned temple just because they don't have any money. Yada yada yada. This happens again and again in Pu Songling.
Yeah, the story we're talking about today is translated Judge Lu,
and it's kind of a family values story.
It is. It's translated by Victor Mayer, one of the great modern literary Chinese translators.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a family values story.
So Can you tell us a little bit about this story, Rob?
So the shell of the plot, not the shell of the plot, the actual plot, is a guy named Chu Artan, who's brave but dumb, or dull-witted is the translation, but he's brave but dumb. And his friends, he's never really managed to get anywhere. And his friends say, you know, the reason you haven't been able to get anywhere is because you haven't done anything interesting. Go to the local temple and steal the image of the underworld judge, Judge Liu, and bring it back here. Kind of his dare. And he goes, all right, I'll do that, because he's brave and dumb. He goes and gets the image, brings it back, freaks his friends out. They can't believe he's done that. And he basically says, all right, well, I can do it whenever I want, so I'll just go put it back, which he does. The next day, or 2 days later, I think, he's drinking, and he's drunk, and there's a knock at the door, and it's the actual Judge Liu from the underworld. He freaks out, Chu does, and says, holy cow, you're here to punish me for taking your image. And the judge is like, nah, I'm cool with that. I just thought I'd just come by and have a drink. And so they do. And the story goes on. They basically become drinking buddies, the underworld judge and the brave but stupid Chu. And the judge one day goes, hey, so why haven't you really gotten anywhere? And Chu says, well, you know, I'm good at sort of figuring out what good writing is, but I can't do it. And the judge says, well, your problem is your heart. I'm going to go get a heart from the underworld, and we're going to switch him, which he does. And so Chu, a little bit alarmed to wake up in the middle of the night and find his chest cavity gaping, which he does. Chu reassures him, don't worry about it. It's just a new heart. You're going to be awesome, which he is. He advances quickly. He writes beautiful prose. His friends can't understand it. And then he says to the judge, you know, it's awesome. I'm glad I'm advancing and all that. But you know what else I'd really like? I'd like a hot wife.
His wife is already kind of hot physically, but she's
says
kind of okay in the face.
Yeah. She's kind of plain. The judge goes, we can do that too. Hang on a second. And he goes, and one night comes back with the head of a beautiful woman and chops his wife's head off and puts the new head back on. This is a classic Pu Songling move, right? Like, people don't seem to mind that their bodies are being eviscerated or chopped into pieces, whatever. And the wife wakes up. Somehow it's still his wife, even though she now has a different head, but whatever. And at first freaks out, and then eventually they're kind of cool with it. And happy marriage ensues. Chu dies, and everyone's very sad. But he comes back as a ghost. And basically says to his wife, I mean, yeah, I'm a ghost, but I have a good job in the underworld. Like, they've put me in charge of this one branch of the bureaucracy in the underworld. Things are good.
And he also takes very good care, even as a dead father, of his son.
Yes.
He educates him, and then at a certain point after a period of time, he's like, actually, I've got a new job in the underworld. I have to go, so I'm never going to see you again.
But at the end of the story, the son, who's been put in charge of something or other in the bureaucracy, one never knows.
In the world of the living,
world, yes, is going to set up sacrifices on a mountain somewhere, and is passed by a coach with white horses and recognizes his father. They had this tearful reunion. His father gives him an enchanted sword and says to his son, "With this, you're going to be awesome," and he is. And at the end of the story, the son passes the sword on to his next of kin, and that's the end.
Yeah, so...
I mean, it's basically like Leave It to Beaver if you just bring in some
if there were some
swapping
dead,
and...
heart-swapping...
eviscerated organs.
I mean...
underworld bureaucracy.
Leave It to Beaver's mother was, I think, okay in the face.
But I think if you had an episode where someone chopped her head off and replaced, that would put us...
Gave her a model's face?
I'm pretty sure that would put us squarely in the R rating.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that Pu Songling does, and we were talking about this before, is there's nothing weird about this story except for the head chopping and the heart removal thing.
I know. We actually were talking
It's actually like a boring story.
It's a very boring story. Like, this guy who's going nowhere just wants to succeed. And he figures out a way to pull it off. Dies. Well, not even dies, but he wants to be a good father and husband. And he is. That's the shell of the plot.
It's so boring if you take out the supernatural elements.
And it makes me wonder sometimes, you mentioned that Pu Songling, at least the conceit is that these are just stories he gathered in his little tea stop or whatever it is.
And that's very much a conceit.
It is. But it makes me wonder if, these are some things that you're expected to be, right? Just about any society expects a father to be a certain thing. But it's never something super exciting, like expects a father to go out and embark on a mythical crusade. It's always like bring stuff home, make sure everyone's cared for. That's a boring story. So it makes me wonder if someone like Pu Songling went, what if we kept the values of the story but made it freaking cool? What if the way you became a good father was by having your heart switch with someone else's from the underworld. Because when you think about it, it doesn't change his character or even the trajectory of the story when he has his heart changed. He's still the same guy who wants to succeed but can't, and all of a sudden he can, but he doesn't change. He's still the same guy. He's still brave, probably not that smart. And it's a really interesting thing that even with his wife, the head is swapped, but, the family continues as it always was.
Yeah, I want to push back against that because I don't know that... I mean, one of the things this story is getting at is what are we? Like, what is the essential meanness? Is our head getting swapped? Does that change who I am as a person? Does my heart getting swapped out change who I am? I mean, it clearly changes Chu's trajectory professionally.
Yes, but it doesn't change him.
But yeah, he's still the same guy in this instance. And it is a very weird thing. But there's also this tension with that because when Judge Liu comes to him at the end, towards the end of the story, and he goes, "Oh, you're going to die in 5 days."
Right.
Chu goes, "Well, can't you do anything about this?" And he says, "No, you really can't change your fate. This thing is decreed by heaven." And, just the better way to deal with this is just to recognize that life and death are kind of the same thing.
Right.
And so there is this question, like, some things are permanent. Some things, our fate, we can't change. But apparently our faces, we can.
We can change. But that's kind of interesting and, in a way, sort of touching because... and I can't think of a lot of any sort of films or books offhand, but I'll explain what I mean. The idea that there's this married couple, right? And they're a happy married couple, even though things aren't perfect. What if you could make things more perfect? Well,
it sounds this is a very kind of Orwellian.
It is kind of. It is in that way, kind of. And yet, the reason I say it's touching is because I feel like in a lot of other stories of this type, once one of the characters gets either a magical item that gives them new power or replaces something with a body part that's more powerful, shenanigans ensue, right? They go rob a temple or they become some mythical hero. Here, they use their switched body parts just to be, better versions of the people they already were.
This reminds me a lot of Huxley, the kind of Brave New World.
Go on.
Thinking. I mean, there is this question of, he essentially finds a kind of technological solution to life's little problems, that being him not being very smart and not being able to write, and his wife not being nearly hot enough in the face. And I don't know, I find this story kind of comforting, but also very disturbing.
Well, yeah, and I think if you had to pick two adjectives to describe Pu Songling, those would be the ones I'd
comforting
choose.
And disturbing.
They're almost the best of his stories are this weird mix of the two. You're just going, what in the world is he doing? And then there's this heartwarming scene between husband and wife, and they're reunited. They're like, oh, that's nice. Like at the end of a story like this, And I forgot, but I have to say this before I forget. A plot element that I forgot to mention is that the head that Judge Liu brings belongs to somebody in the real world.
Tell us about this head, Rob.
So the head is a real head. The head belongs to someone in the real world. A beautiful woman who's been betrothed twice, never actually married. And a thief becomes besotted with her and breaks into the house at night to try to force himself on her. Doesn't work. She screams for help. He freaks out, cuts her head off. I don't know why this is the first move that the thief goes with.
It makes sense.
If you're trying to fight your way out, that's pretty extreme. Anyway.
You think so, Rob?
That's pretty... I know that we don't often talk about how to break into a house, but this would be not a good move. But anyway...
He's not even French.
He's not even French. I don't even know what that means. But So, anyway, head gets cut off, runs away. And then later on, the grieving family hears that their daughter's head... their daughter's somewhere else. And the father goes to investigate this, and he's like, what the heck, dude? You got my daughter here. And the guy goes, no, let me tell you what happened. What happened is, that my wife wasn't super hot before, but your daughter's face was super hot. And so the judge of the underworld switched him for us. So, it's cool.
And what's funny is the father of the daughter then suddenly considers his wife...
the daughter.
The daughter, and which means he considers Chu the son-in-law, and he treats him like a son-in-law for the rest of his life.
So odd.
Just totally like that happens.
Totes whatevs, man.
Yeah,
exactly.
She
looks like him. Cool, let's go with it. And
so there's this question. He's considering the wife as if it's his daughter, even though it's only her head that is his daughter's head. I mean, has the wife
Chu,
changed?
But I was going to say, but yet for Chu, it's still his wife, even with someone else's head. So you have two ideas about what it means to really be a person. One, it looks like her, that works for me. And the other one goes, doesn't matter if it doesn't look like her, it's still her.
But the wife actually wakes up and she is confused because it doesn't look like she originally looked like. So at least in psychological terms, which this story is very psychologically complicated for this period. She is dealing with this from the perspective of the original wife. Like her essence, her soul is still the original wife's. Right. It's just her head that's changed.
Right. And it's funny because we read this story from the standpoint of centuries of advanced medical science where questions like this are a little more complicated. In the 17th century in China, and of course I don't have any sort of encyclopedic knowledge of, class.
Anything.
No, that is actually true, yes. But you can see an interesting sort of popular sense of what it means to be a person here, which is sometimes maybe just from the perspective of other people, right? So the wife goes, something's odd here. And the husband says, no, you're still you. It's cool. Don't worry about it.
You're just hotter.
You're just hotter than you. I don't know about you, but I read this story, and it's hard to imagine a husband pulling that line off. No, it's cool. It's cool. You have a whole new head now. You're way hotter. That's okay. And she goes, all right. Anyway,
I don't know if my wife would be cool with me.
I don't think we need to go into how our wives would respond to having their heads swapped. Hopefully not between each other. That would be very, very awkward. Well, we already share a podcast. I mean,
my wife is going to listen to this, and this is going to be kind of an awkward.
She's going to give us the thumbs down on this podcast. Like, yeah, you can't send this out into the real world. No, but let's actually shift gears from this a little bit, because the other thing about this story that I just find interesting is that. So this guy, the main dude, Chu, is not advancing in the civil service examinations, etc., because he can't write. He can't write well. Now, when you think of what would make you write really well, at least for me, my first impulse is not the heart. It's the brain. It's your ability to sort of use your intellect and your reason. But this is something different. He has his heart swapped. And that is what makes him a better writer.
Judge Liu finds a heart for him that has holes that aren't blocked. Apparently, Chu's holes.
Apparently, Chu ate a lot of fried chicken or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably dumplings because he is from Shandong. Lord.
I love Shandong dumplings. I was telling you before the podcast.
They're amazing.
Man. They're phenomenal.
But they probably aren't that great for your heart, which means they're probably not that great, at least in the context of the story, for your ability to write.
Yeah.
I know I have definitely blamed Shandong dumplings on my inability to write at points.
And this could be a cautionary tale for any student out there. If you're subsisting on Cheetos and pizza while you're writing your papers at the end of the term, could be that your holes are getting plugged up in your heart.
But I think the point of this story is that you need to go find some representation of a god, drink with him.
Yes.
Hopefully he will honor you with his real presence, and then have open heart surgery while you're asleep.
I think it's a good application. Really,
yeah, I think that's a good place to end.
I think it is. So yeah, I think just to summarize here, if relationships are going bad, you're not succeeding professionally. You want to
drink with gods
and have them swap body parts for you. I think that's a good place to end, Lee.
I'm Rob Moore.
I'm Lee Moore.
And hang on, did my head just switch to?
I did pick up a statue earlier. And had a beer.
Come on!
This is not cool. This is going to be very difficult to explain to our wives later.
Oh man!
Well, this is the Chinese Literature Podcast. Somehow.